interesting because I actually was just looking, to start my gardening process for the year. I have a new house with a new yard, and my daughter wants to grow strawberries. And if you look at strawberries, you need to pair them with other plants that help them grow better. And that's kind of what you're saying is, you have to be intentional, because if you put something that is going to destroy them or not nurture them, then they're not going to grow and you're not going to have fruit. Yeah. Do you think it's easier though and David Sarnoff can probably speak a little bit to do you think it's easier for this to translate in an IT field than in a law firm field? Law firms are still fairly top heavy, white male. They are getting better with hiring more diversity and putting more diversity on their executive committees and, in their practice group leadership. But do you think kind of the way you all are able to do business makes it a little bit easier to have an inclusive organization than it is when there's kind of silos in terms of practice groups and,
Well, thanks for the question, Jackie. And for those of you who don't know me, again, I'm David Sarnoff. I'm a Director of Strategic Partnerships, and I'm a certified executive coach with Loeb Leadership. And I met David and Heinan as business partners of the Association of Legal Administrators chapter in DC. And I remember the first time I met David over a few years ago, we jumped right into this conversation way back then. And I really want to applaud Heinan and David, because what I'm hearing is leadership. And this is where most organizations just really stumble, because leaders of the organization have to model the behavior they expect of others, particularly in creating an inclusive culture. And I didn't know we were going to go in the garden analogy, but it's a perfect analogy, because in order to create an inclusive culture, you actually have to have the environment in place to welcome people, to transition them into the organization, to cultivate and nurture relationships, and to anticipate the needs that they'll have, so they feel supported, mentored, developed, and that there's a pathway to leadership. I think where law firms are challenged specifically is that they're getting pressure from their clients to increase the numbers of people of color and from marginalized communities, and their mindset is to just go out and hire people, and we just have to increase numbers. But if you don't have an inclusive culture that's welcoming to the firm, those folks you're hiring, they're not going to stay, and the research and the data just continually bears this out. One of my colleagues, Joyce Stevens, I think also has a great analogy to creating an inclusive culture. Said when new parents bring a baby home from the hospital, they don't ask the baby, what do you need to thrive and survive? They have to have that already in place for that baby to survive and thrive. And I think organizations need to do a better job, instead of putting the burden on the people of color and from marginalized communities that they're hiring, to, all right, we hired you, now you make it work out. I think they have to be, as David said, more intentional about having representation, having a pathway to leadership and career and professional development.
Well, I will listen. I'm a fantastic point. And as I wrote an article recently that showed up in the ALA magazine. Thank you again, Jackie, for allowing me to voice those thoughts. And as I'm continuing to sort of recalibrate my thinking about this, the idea of when we talk about diversity and inclusion, we talk about hiring. And I think we are talking about the end from the beginning. And my question to a couple of the folks there is, to your firm leadership, why do you want to have a DEI program? And if it is only to hire, if it's only to get more color in the building, or get more women, or get more people in marginalized communities in the building, you can stop the farce, stop pretending you want this, throw a bunch more money at recruiting, and tell your recruiter, go get more, because we're going to be churning through them, because we don't care about actually having anything that matters. I think diversity and inclusion based on, and I'm using my relationship with Heinan as a prime example. It starts from an internal desire to learn from other people and to appreciate what makes us different so we can figure out what we can do great together. And if you don't have that, then you can't hire enough because it won't be around.
You're really talking about changing your corporate DNA before you start bringing in people who are going to feel immediately ostracized if you have not done that, right? And that goes back to your fertilizer analogy. I also don't know very much about gardening. I just have no knowledge of gardening, but I do know you need fertilizer and water, and you could throw bulbs and seeds in there, and if you don't have it, they're gonna die. And right. Like that, I was working with you on that, David.
Right. Thank you, Heinan.
So you've got to have the fertilizer, you've got to have the sunshine, you've got to have the water if you want this thing. And then, unlike gardens, and this is something I've heard David Campbell say, and I think he's right. If you're showing up as a diverse organization where people of all walks of life can thrive, diversity will find you, right? People of color will notice this, right? LGBTQ plus community members will notice this, and they will say, hey, this is a friendly place. Go here. You can thrive.